Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and first of all, you haven't seen any videos from me for the past week because I have been pretty sick, and you'll probably still hear that in my voice at the moment. I'm a lot better now, but there's still that residual sickness that I'm getting over. So in any case, with today's video, apologies for that, but I do want to just go over the lightning strike, the character, a little bit before I jump into the new character, which is a Inquisitor, bow-based ice shot, lightning arrow, and galvanic arrow. But to begin with, the lightning strike character, there really isn't much else to say for the wrap up for the end game. It was just huge. Lightning Strike did much better, much more than I ever really could have anticipated it would do. And as you saw in the previous video, yeah, my gear was pretty good, and we did try and min-max it to a certain extent. But the point is, actual Lightning Strike is just pretty solid. Because I did try a bunch of other skills, for example Spectral Throw, which should function very similar, the exact same setup, and Static Strike, which I thought would even be superior, and they were both like much more underwhelming than Lightning Strike for clearing, for just like big AoE and reliable big hits. Maybe they could potentially have better single target or a different playstyle, and I'd say it's up to you to try that sort of stuff out, but the take-home message is Lightning Strike itself is actually a pretty damn good skill for big area stuff. If there wasn't a whole bunch of Delirium and Double Beyond and all that, maybe it wouldn't be as good, and if it didn't have an explosion chest, maybe it wouldn't have been as good. But overall, we cleared Wave 20 Simulacrums one after the other quite easily without too much trouble, except for the Wave 20 Coasters if they were a bit rough, and the single target was never that good on this skill, like Cirrus and whatever. You know, was a bit slower than some other characters, but as an overall character, it just cleaned up Delve really nicely. In my Depth 500, it did the Deliriums, the Simulacrums, and I can easily recommend Lightning Strike. It will be a bit hard to piece this character together. Building it is actually pretty simple, but it will take a lot of currency to get it to the same sort of level and the same sort of chaos spam that I put through to get all the appropriate gear. But just wanted to say, yeah, Lightning Strike definitely something you can think about in the future as an actual skill to play with. Compared to some of the others, it is actually pretty solid. And then we're moving on to the character I have been playing a little bit on and off for the past week while I've been sick, and it is the Inquisitor bow ice shot. And then I actually started to move into Lightning Arrow in the last few hours of yesterday's stream, as well as Galvanic Arrow and Void Shot from Voidfletcher. It's pretty hard to go past the Voidfletcher as an additional source of damage in bow builds, I'd say, if you're scaling anything to do with arrows, because it's just a bunch of extra damage. It essentially doubles my single target, or at least does probably 2 to 3 times more damage if we're just talking a single button press for a burst scenario where you just want to you know, hit the boss one time or hit an enemy one time. It just shoots out a bunch of extra projectiles. If you're unaware what Voidfletcher or Void Shot is, it is the quiver that drops off of Uber Elder that gives you an additional explosion, or just releases an additional arrow every single time you attack, but it's got a cooldown, or it takes 0.5 seconds to get another charge, and you can have 5 charges up at once. If you use any sort of skill with Barrage on it, or Barrage itself, you can unload all 5 of those charges at once. So you see at the top of the bar, I do have 5 charges sometimes I've got 0, and you can see the big purple explosions. That's what Void Shot looks like, and it scales with additional arrows. So in this current build, I do have 4 additional arrows when we got Dying Sun and our bow on, so we have 5 big Void Shots coming out every single hit. But if you use the Barrage, you dump all 25 at once, and they do overlap and they do deal huge damage. So it's just a nice little extra burst. And it's not the entire basis of the build. For example, if we didn't have it, then Lightning Arrow and Ice Shot would still be cleaning up huge. And then Galvanic Arrow single target would be respectable, but I don't think it'd be you know, blowing anyone away with what it's doing. But with the Void Shot, it's turned into something quite a bit bigger, and it may end up being one of the better builds I do for the league once again. It just depends on how it performs in the end game, but so far so good. It's been cleaning up real nice. It's been doing these double beyond juiced maps, and it can be fairly tanky. We're going to be at about 5,500 life, about 1,500, close to 2,000 energy shield with Mind Over Matter and Eldritch Battery, so it can take some hits and it will dish out some pretty big hits, and it seems like it's a pretty good delve character thus far. The biggest problem with this character, the gear's not even that bad. The biggest problem is basically just leveling it is a bitch, because Bow Inquisitor, and as you'll see in a second, the passive tree is just shit. Like, it doesn't make any sense unless you can build it somehow differently to what I did, but the way I built it, there is a lot of travel, and it does start to sort of get a bit weaker unless you've got real good leveling gear. Even with my good leveling gear, it felt like a bit of a struggle at times, but nothing you couldn't overcome. It's just leveling. It'll take like an extra 30 minutes as opposed to the 5 hours or whatever we normally do, but it doesn't feel great compared to plenty of other characters, and you don't like speed fly through the deliriums of the leveling experience either. So all in all, it has actually been a pretty good character, though just the leveling was pretty rough to start with. And you'll see that I just kind of reuse a lot of the gear from previous characters. A lot of it's very interchangeable. Did make a few new adjustments, a few new pieces, but I think overall it isn't that bad. It's not going to be something you start with by any means, I don't think, but it is something that is realistically attainable. And the bow I ended up doing was you can now have 2 additional arrows on bows by default, and I was just trying to craft that with some LE damage on it, and you'll see it turned out pretty good, but it only took me a few hundred ults, so I will probably try and craft one once again, just to see if we can replicate the results or how different it could be, because I think I got pretty lucky in the end. But you could also just do this build with a Death's Opus, for example, which is a 6-link Death's Opus is like 30C, so that's not too much of an issue, but it won't perform quite as well as this one because you get more attack speed and more damage out of using a proper, well-crafted bow. So let's get into how I built the character. There is our character, level 90, called Epilepsy Warning. It's like a frog kind of spazzing out, because there is a lot of graphics going on with this character, at least if you're using Ice Shot. The way we built it is around Voidfletcher Quiver. As I said, you get level 20 Void Shot. Every 0.5 seconds stacks up to 5 times, and then every single time you right click, you will unleash the Void Shot at your mouse cursor, and if you use something attached to Barrage, then you'll unleash all of them at once. Likewise with just the Barrage skill. Now you don't charge them up in the hideout, and you've seen how it is throughout the video. But we tried to base it around a bow that has 2 additional arrows. So the way I crafted this guy is just by Alt-Regal spamming. So every time I'd see 2 additional arrows, I'd then Regal. But it started with the LE damage to attacks and the 2 additional arrows. I then imprint Regaled until I got something. And on the second hit, I think it was, we got the cold damage. I then, blocked Dexterity, hit it with an Exalt, got crit. But for most of the character, almost the entire character and almost the entire video that you've seen, I just used it as a 3-stat bow. It had the 2 additional, the cold damage, and the LE, and then I crafted crit. I only just then went around to slamming this and got this far, and like I said, I think we can replicate these results, or at least I'll give it a shot, and it doesn't outperform Death's Opus by that much, but it certainly is nice to have. So I think we'll manage to craft some similar ones. The big LE to attacks isn't as big a deal because we get plenty % throughout the build, but it's mostly about stacking flat damage. And a lot of our flat damage is coming from Wrath, Anger, and Herald of Ice, and we're also beefing up our Wrath and Anger throughout various other methods. But you also get plenty of flat damage there, and then some coming from a Mark of the Elder, for example, as well. So what the passive tree looks like is pretty horrible. It starts here and then goes all the way through there, and basically none of that does anything. It's just travel. You get almost no damage by doing any of this. And then eventually you can pick up some bow stuff, and then down here for clusters, which let us do point blank for starters. Our large cluster then just gets us some nice generic damage. So we've got Disorienting Display, Vengeful Commander, which buffs both Wrath and Anger, and then Sadist, which is 60% increased damage. The idea was just to get these two, but if we got this as well, sure, why not? Not a big deal, but I think I was just trying to get these two and then eliminate this last slot. And then over here I've got Vengeful Commander comboed with Precise and Precise, because we do need some crit and crit multi in the build. And then I'm trying to stack some Feast of Flesh, since we are attacking quite fast with our Barrage Galvanic Arrow. I've just then started getting Rage into the build as well, because my next best upgrade here is one more medium, and then either a small or just a dual. But if we just get Rage instead of something like this, Precise, Vengeful, it's a slight DPS downgrade overall to get Rage and just maintain Rage and then press Berserk, but it is very nice to have that Berserk button. So this is one of those builds that you could easily avoid using Rage on, but it's honestly just not worth not having the Berserk button, so I'm going to get into it anyway. But up until now, level 90, haven't had Rage and it's been completely fine. Don't think that it's just another Warcry stacking build, because it's just an absolute luxury here, and I've done without it for now, but you may as well do it because the tool is there to be used. Besides that, just a jewel here that's got crit multi for anger, and then a couple of jewels that just do some crit multi and damage, since there's not really much we can do on jewels. You can see that we get Mind Over Matter, and that's because we have a Devouring Diadem that has Eldritch Battery. So whenever you take damage, some of it will go to your energy shield as well, and all of your mana is then consumed with our reservation, and instead you use energy shield as mana. I did have to grab just a Regalia that's got life, energy shield, so it's pretty basic to start with, and these go for like 10C or some shit, but it had to have a spare suffix, and then I tried to exalt attack crit onto it and got a tier 2 roll. It can't get any higher with this item level, but ultimately it's not really that big a difference because I'm still using the Crit Strikes gem and I've still got crit on my bow. So basically all you're looking for is a Regalia or some sort of energy shield base with some good energy shield, some life, and then being able to craft percent life as max energy shield, because that does a lot of our energy shield in this build. But the attack crit is nice if you can get it. If we had a bigger attack crit, 1.5, we might be able to justify dropping crit strikes, but currently it's possible I still do that, but it's still pretty damn worth keeping to just constantly have crits going. Likewise, we're still using crit strikes in our Lightning Arrow or Ice Shot setup. I was using Ice Shot up until last level, and then we started playing around with Lightning Arrow. Lightning Arrow, for the most part, does feel a bit nicer, but you can do either if you really want. And we're currently using GMP as well, just for more arrows. So you can see we get a lot of arrows. But if you can afford it or want to go down that route, an Awakened Fork is going to be much better, I think. Take out the GMP. We'll still have 5 arrows like this, but then also Awakened Fork, and it should smash some serious ass. But currently it's just Lightning Arrow, GMP, Mirage Archer, early damage with attacks, crit strikes, and energy leech. And down here we have Galvanic Arrow, Barrage, cold damage, early damage with attacks, crit strikes. Probably replace that for Hypothermia eventually, but currently that's what we're running. And probably get a 6th link eventually too. Currently though, in my helm we've got Anger, Enlighten level 4, which turns into a level 5 thanks to this, Wrath, and then Herald of Ice. And then you can still fit in Precision, you can still fit in War Banner to fix your accuracy because of the amount of sort of mana unreserved we still have thanks to the Helm enchant and the Enlightens. But you can fix accuracy throughout gear as well, or by using a split personality down here. If you use a split personality with accuracy and life, you get 60 life and 500 accuracy, and that's what I was doing for a little bit, but turns out I don't need to do that anymore. Grabbed an amulet with some crit multi and accuracy. That helped fix my accuracy. You got a Mark of the Elder, and then a Vermilion ring. Once again, the reused one with Assassin's Mark. Grab a belt, reduce flask charges if you can, so that you can spam flasks just a bit easier. Haven't changed my jewel, but accuracy, life, maybe some phasing is probably what we'll go for. And we got these Temple Gloves that have crit strikes comboed with the lightning res. It's not super important, but I think it's a little bit of a min-max. And that's about it for the gear, I think. Then got just Stone Golem, Second Wind and Dash, War Banner, Precision, Enduring Cry over there, and that's pretty much it. Dying Sun, they're pretty cheap these days, but they are very good for a Voidfletcher build, 2 additional arrows. Cinder Swallow, can't really go past one of these days, since on-kill effect is just huge. And I'm not sure what else to say. Inquisitor, my first 4 points were going this way, then this way. You can go the other way if you really want. I think that's about it for now. You can use just about any skills while doing this stuff. You can spec into some different things. We originally had King of the Hill, but the knockback feels kind of shit, especially for the way Voidfletcher works, where you shoot with your arrows and then knock shit back, and then your Voidfletcher stuff's going to explode somewhere else. That's kind of annoying. But yeah, Bow Inquisitor, something you can definitely consider. We'll see how it goes in the end game very soon, but so far, so good. Sorry, I'm still a bit sick, and this talking has made me a little bit lightheaded. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.